for some bill introduction requests. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. I would like to introduce 25 RS 0454. It's a bill concerning rules and regulations relating to proposed rule and regulation ratification by the legislature exempting the Kansas Wildlife and Parks from the requirements of this section, basically exempting them from a bill that we passed last year, 2648.
Is this a bill you're bringing for somebody, or is this one of your ideas?
No, I'll take the credit, or the spears, whichever one it's going to be.
Body, is there any questions? Without seeing any objections, bill's accepted.
Thank you. My next bill is RS 0020, and this is a bill that's similar to one that's already been introduced. It's dealing with the senior licensing, and this is almost the same, except for there is a federal deal that requires to get credit for the Pittman's-Robertson Act and the Dingell-Johnson Act, which are federal taxes on hunting and fishing license sale, or hunting and fishing equipment and ammo sales and guns and all that kind of stuff. You have to charge a certain amount for a hunting license. It's like $4 right now. What this says is that if that would ever change, it would just adjust automatically. It wouldn't require the Wildlife and Parks to come back to the legislature to ask for another change. It would just automatically do it. So,
Body, any questions? Any objections? Without seeing any, accepted.
very good. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, sir. And Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm introducing RS 0144. This bill is called the Defend the Guard Act, and it prohibits the National Guard from serving overseas in active duty combat unless Congress declares war.
Any questions? Any objections? Not seeing any, bill accepted. Representative Myers.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, someone coughed. I didn't hear my name. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am introducing 25 RS 0446 on behalf of Representative Linda Featherston. This is a bill requiring that firearms be securely stored so that criminals and children cannot access them.
Body, is there any questions? Any objections? Not seeing any, bill accepted. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have two bills to introduce today. The first is on behalf of the Kansas Clubhouse Coalition. It has to do with the cap on lottery ticket vending machine sales and Kansas mental health clubhouses. The RS is 25 RS 0687.
Is this real similar to the one we heard last year, was it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Body, any questions? And without objection, accepted. You have another one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next one is a bill that has to do with the practice and regulation of and licensure of the practitioners of emergency medical services. It is 25 RS 0408.
Body, any questions? Any objections? Without seeing any, bill accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other bill requests? All right, not seeing any, we'll move on to the next one here. We're going to open up a hearing on HB 2052, and we'll open it up to Mike. Will you give us a rundown on that?
Mike Hyman, the Reviser of Statutes Office. I have a little summary that I passed out. I sent it by email shortly before the committee started, so I didn't think you'd have it in your electronic file yet. But anyway, what this bill does, it amends the Personal and Family Protection Act, which is also known as the Concealed Carry Law. The first section of the bill amends one of the sections of that concealed carry law, that the Attorney General shall not issue a license. And then the changes are in some updates to the criminal law dealing with criminal use of weapons and criminal possession of a firearm by convicted felons. It's mainly just making sure that they correspond with, there's been some amendments and so on. And so if you have committed one of these crimes, you're not eligible to receive a concealed carry license. Section 2, it establishes, it's on page 5, is the amendment procedure for a person that holds a provisional license, which is a person that's 18 years of age, can carry a concealed license or concealed handgun if they have a provisional license. And this is a procedure for them to obtain a standard license when they reach the age of 21. Another provision on page 6 in section 3 deals with, it's at the bottom there, if there's a suspension or revocation, it would require physical surrender of the license to the Attorney General. Section 4 is a technical amendment in line with what's going on in Section 1. And then finally, Section 5 deals with a off-duty law enforcement that wants to go into a building where you cannot carry a concealed firearm. They can, but apparently sometimes they're required to provide personal information or to wear some type of identification that they are an off-duty law enforcement, and this would prohibit that. If you've got questions, I'll try and answer them.
Body, are there any questions? Oh, not see. I do have a question though. I just wanted just for clarification in this, the way I read this, if a building on an off-duty officer, if a building allows an on-duty officer in uniform to carry a gun in a building, this bill also allows them to carry a gun concealed in said building, correct?
Right.
Okay, just make sure.
Off-duty, whatever.
Yeah. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, I just had a quick question too, just for clarification. Are these off-duty police officers still required to at least prove at the door that with some sort of identification that they are in fact an off-duty officer?
I'm sure they would show a card or whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Reisman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that Section 5, would this also cover retirees that are authorized to carry firearms?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
In Section 5, it mentions about carrying concealed. Would this also cover retirees that are federally, I see somebody shaking their hand. They have
Just deals with off-duty law enforcement. If you look on page 8, it says, no person of authority for a building shall require, request, or record personal information of any off-duty officer entering the building. And then it lists you can't ask for email, home address, phone number, and so on. And you can't require that they wear some type of identification badge or whatever. The next section is current law, or a law enforcement officer from another state or a retired law enforcement officer meeting the requirements of federal law may carry a concealed handgun in any building where an off-duty law enforcement officer would. That's current law.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Revisor, the whole topic of off-duty officers and not being required to show identification in entering a building, my memory is that we had a bill like this like a year or two ago, correct? How is this different?
I think this is very similar, identical to what the committee's heard in the past.
Okay. And, all right.
Any other questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike. We'll move on to some testimony here. We're going to start off with our proponents, and we're going to start off with David Soden. Welcome to the committee.
Chairman, committee, thank you for letting us be here today. My name is David Souden. I'm from Derby, Kansas. I want to speak today in support of House Bill 2052. And there's a lot of things in the bill that I would love to speak in favor of, but today I'm here to speak in favor of just the section regarding a provisional license to a standard license. As a Kansas citizen, I deeply appreciate the legislature's ongoing efforts to protect our concealed carry rights and strengthen our Second Amendment protections. I have personally held a concealed carry license for approximately 14 years and fully understand the critical role that these laws have played in ensuring our ability to protect ourselves and our families. I believe the current issue with provisional licenses is likely an unintentional oversight made while enhancing young adults' ability to protect themselves and preserving reciprocity agreements for all Kansans license holders. The legislature's commitment to supporting both our federal Second Amendment rights and the safety of Kansans through stronger concealed carry laws and improved reciprocity agreements with other states is commendable. These actions reflect a dedication to upholding the freedoms we value and ensuring the safety and rights of all law-abiding citizens across our state. However, the current law unnecessarily restricts the rights of young adults by preventing their provisional license from converting to standard license when they turn 21, despite these individuals already meeting the necessary training and background check requirements. This delay not only unjustly denies them their full constitutional rights, but also leaves them vulnerable by restricting their ability to carry in states that recognize Kansas concealed carry licenses. This issue has directly impacted my family. When I took my children to the Sedgwick County DMV in Derby to receive their provisional concealed carry license this past June, we encountered confusion and misinformation. We were told by the staff at the DMV that my daughter, who was approaching 21, should not get her provisional license. We were also told that there would be a process for her to convert her provisional license, but there was no clarity in regards to how that would work. I was instructed if I didn't like that answer to call a legislator. So I did. And the legislator informed me that there was a process, that in fact it would be manageable, and that my 20-year-old should go ahead and get her concealed carry license. As we processed through that, we learned that, in fact, there was no process. The AG's office didn't have the ability in the bill to convert a provisional to a standard. The original belief was that every state, every law enforcement in Kansas would understand that it was only provisional because of their age, and that at 21 it became a full license. And while that may or may not be accurate, it doesn't protect them and allow them to carry in other states who wouldn't necessarily have the understanding of Kansas laws. My 18-year-old son obtained his provisional concealed carry license after completing the state-mandated training and background checks. However, under the current law, he cannot carry concealed with the same legal protections and reciprocity as other licensees until well after his 21st birthday. In fact, he will not have access to his constitutional right to carry firearm until a year after his 21st birthday, after any other citizen who did not obtain a provisional license would have the ability to carry and protect themselves. Similarly, my daughter, who is here today and will testify, who received her provisional carry, would be almost 24 before she would ever have the same right as a 21-year-old that did not accept a provisional license. While I've discussed how this directly affects my family, they are not alone. Many other Kansans who have exercised their rights and obtained a provisional license to conceal carry are facing the same unfair limitations. This restriction serves no legitimate public safety purpose. By delaying access to a standard concealed carry license for individuals who have already met legal requirements, the state not only weakens their ability to defend themselves, but also unjustly withholds their constitutional rights. House Bill 2052 would correct the imbalance by ensuring that provisional license holders are granted the same rights as other responsible, law-abiding citizens upon turning 21. This legislation is about fairness, justice, and upholding the constitutional integrity of our laws. By passing House Bill 2052, the committee can restore the rights of Kansans who have fulfilled the requirements for concealed carry and eliminate unnecessary barriers to self-protection. I respectfully urge you to pass this bill. Thank you for your time and your consideration, and I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Body, questions? Representative Osmond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. Can you help me to better understand a provisional license? What are the limitations of it that get rectified when you go to a full licensure?
So under a provisional license, somebody that's 18 to 20 can carry concealed in the state of Kansas only. A standard concealed carry license comes with reciprocity. So as a concealed carry license, I can conceal carry in Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas. I believe there's 26 states. My children who are not 21, if they have that provisional, cannot conceal carry in those other states. Yeah, great question.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ashton Sowden. Welcome to the committee.
Chairperson and esteemed members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide a testimony in support of House Bill 2052, which among other adjustments seeks to convert provisional concealed carry licenses to standard concealed carry licenses. My name is Ashton Sowden. I am here to share my personal experience as a Kansan who obtained a provisional concealed carry license shortly before turning 21 years old. I am a law-abiding citizen who values the right to protect myself and my family. I am grateful that Kansas allows individuals under 21 to exercise their Second Amendment rights through provisional licensing. However, through the current policy creates a significant gap for people like me who transition out of the provisional license category but find themselves unable to obtain a standard license. I received my provisional license just a few months before my 21st birthday. At that time, I was fully trained and committed to exercising my responsibilities as a lawful concealed carry holder. Upon turning 21, I assumed that I would have the ability to easily transition to a standard concealed carry license. Unfortunately, I have learned that my provisional status would not convert and that I would be required to wait until I was nearly 25 years old to obtain a standard license. As a young woman living in today's world, I deeply value my constitutional right to carry concealed, as it provides a sense of security for both myself and the people around me. Being able to defend myself is incredibly important, and it is frustrating that my ability to carry in reciprocal states is limited until I turn 25. I can't even imagine what could happen in 1 year, let alone 4. This delay is both unnecessary and burdensome, and it creates an arbitrary gap that prevents young adults who have already demonstrated their competency and responsibility maintaining their constitutional rights. House Bill 2052 addresses these issues by allowing provisional licenses to be converted to standard licenses upon the licensee reaching the age of 21. This logical adjustment ensures that Kansans who have already met the requirements for a provisional license do not lose their right or have it reduced upon their 21st birthday. The bill simplifies the process, eliminates unnecessary barriers, and aligns with the principles of fairness and responsibility. As someone directly affected by this policy, I strongly urge the committee to pass House Bill 2052. Doing so will not only benefit individuals like me, but strengthen the trust and confidence that Kansans have in our state's concealed carry licensing system. Thank you for providing your time and consideration. I am happy to answer any questions or provide any further information as needed.
Body, are there any questions? Representative McNorton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So clarification, please. You have a provisional license, you got at age 20. So that is a 4-year, or why is it 25 before you can get a traditional? What's that gap there? Why is that?
I'll be almost 25 because my birthday's in September and I obtained the provisional in June.
Say, what was that?
I obtained the provisional in June and my birthday's in September, so I'll be almost 25.
Okay, because that provisional goes for 4 years,
Yes,
then,
sir.
like a regular license?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Ashton, thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Lieutenant Greenwood. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for having me today. I'm Lieutenant Tim Greenwood. I'm with the Hayes Police Department, and I'm here on behalf of the Kansas Peace Officer Association. We have, as KPOA, we're the oldest and largest officers organization within the state of Kansas, with over 3,200 members. Today I'm here to talk about this bill and to express our solid support for the bill. I can speak more specifically to Section 5, which our officers are the most concerned with, and that is the right of officers to carry off-duty into public venues without having their personal information collected, such as their address, their email address, their telephone number, and even more importantly, being marked with a highly visible band or tag to identify them not only as a law enforcement officer, but as somebody carrying concealed in the venue that they're attending. Often these officers are required to take special entrances and take time away from their time with their family and lose the opportunity to exercise their rights, plain and simple. As law enforcement officers, our responsibilities, our obligations, our training, it doesn't come off with the uniform. We don't shed it with the uniform. And our positions within law enforcement often subject us to dangers that most citizens haven't experienced by being identified as that officer that did this to me, that officer that arrested me, that officer that is responsible. And we deserve the right to carry concealed when we're off duty, and to subject us to collecting our personal data, to identifying us in a crowd of people of, oh, that's a law enforcement officer and he's carrying concealed, it simply doesn't make sense. So I'd like to express on behalf of the Kansas Peace Officer Association and those officers that choose to carry concealed, we follow the law. There was a question earlier about identification. We carry our creds, our credentials with us, so we can be identified as law enforcement officers to anybody that asks. If and should we need to gain entry in that manner, and or if there's an incident that happens, we're prepared to deal with it. But we shouldn't be subjected to unnecessary red tape, for lack of a better word. I thank you again for this opportunity, and I'll stand for questions.
Representative James?
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about as far as collecting? Who would do that as an example?
There's venues in Wichita that if you go to, for example, a wind surge game where not only do you have to use a special entrance, but once you're there, you have to fill out a form collecting your personal information, your address, your telephone number, your email address, and then you're giving a wristband, a highly visible bright green wristband to carry inside or that you're supposed to wear while inside the venue, tagging you as law enforcement.
Okay, so it's not if you're working as an off-duty police officer somewhere.
That's correct, sir. This is in an off-duty status. I'm not on the clock. I'm not getting paid, but we reserve the privileges of carrying concealed when we're off duty.
Do you know if this happens in any other cities?
I've heard of it happening in Kansas City. I've heard of it happening in Wichita, and I've heard of it personally happening in Dodge City, depending upon who's playing in Dodge City.
And do you know why they're collecting it?
I do not, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Clayton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is kind of following up on the previous representative's question. So when you're talking about these venues, do they allow non-officers to conceal carry?
I can't speak to that, ma'am. I personally, I'm not related to any permit holders that have tried. I don't know if they're allowing permit holders or if they're turning them away. I can't answer
Because the
that.
way that I see this is that, okay, so for instance, if I'm going to see a soccer game and I, just as a regular private citizen with a concealed carry license, the venue, the private business reserves the right to say like, hey, no one can conceal carry, but they might say, well, wait a minute, law enforcement, let's let them do that, but we get that extra information. Now, to me, this seems like a private business exercising their right and granting an exception to law enforcement that a regular concealed carry license holder, like a layperson, might not have. So to me, if you really, as law enforcement, want to conceal carry in the venue, then that's a special privilege that's granted, and that's the purview of the venue. So to me, I'm having a conflict with the, do I compel a private business who I see as offering a special exception to law enforcement, then take, that right of their part away to determine who can and cannot carry in their venue. So that's just kind of where I'm at here.
Thank you for that question, ma'am. My response to that would be, we are, as law enforcement officers, based upon our background investigations, our training, and our experiences, we are afforded by law the right to carry anywhere an on-duty police officer would. It shouldn't matter whether I shed this uniform and am in plain clothes, whether you're talking about the firearm on my hip or the one in my side pocket that you can't see. We have the same abilities and experience and quite frankly, the disposition to handle these emergent situations as they arise. So the current law affords us the right to carry anywhere an on-duty law enforcement officer would. That is different from a concealed carry permit holder who is restricted by the owner of the establishment.
And I guess just, Mr. Chair, if I may, as a follow-up here. So for instance, law enforcement, wearing uniforms or not wearing uniforms, you can carry anywhere. But when you're wearing your uniform, you're not carrying your weapon concealed. I know that you are law enforcement. I know by looking at you wearing the uniform, I know that you're trained. I know that you are qualified, right? And so likewise, as someone who probably has a concealed carry license, you are also granted the right to conceal carry, except in places where the venue doesn't permit it. So this seems to me, just as law enforcement wanting this venue to do, or these particular venues, it seems to me to be like arenas, for concerts and sporting events, to grant a special exception. And again, it seems to me like they already are. I get that it would be frustrating to have to, fill things out, but it's like, whatever. People get our data for everything all the time, everywhere. If you have a Facebook account, everyone knows your stuff. It's too late. So to me, I definitely get the provision of the bill that the previous conferee spoke about. It's ridiculous that they have to wait that long to get a regular license, but this is the section I'm having trouble with. So anything else that you can offer me to kind of, edify that, but I'm just having trouble getting my head around it, and I appreciate your help.
No, absolutely, ma'am, and I appreciate the questions. As law enforcement, by law, we are required to carry our credentials with us. So if there's any question about, oh, well, you need to go through the scanner, I'm going to set it off, here's my credentials, you have that visual confirmation that this is a qualified law enforcement officer. As far as the private venue denying the right of entry, sure, if they don't want law enforcement to be there, but we're saying based off of the law that we have the right to carry anywhere an on-duty police officer does. That's federal law, and it's echoed in state statute. The challenges we come is, frankly, these venues are operating outside of that. And to endanger me and endanger my family, and, well, everybody's information is out there anyway, so just go ahead and give them to them. Frankly, I disagree with that sentiment. I don't have Facebook because I don't want my information out there. And that's my right as a private citizen. And just because I'm a law enforcement officer, there shouldn't be punitive consequences for that when I take my family out to a venue.
Representative Schmo.
Thank you, Chairman. So as the law stands right now, basically you're free to carry wherever. If you take off your duty belt and your outer shirt, all of a sudden you're a different classification?
By the law, I'm not supposed to be. In practice, we're subjected to special circumstances.
Okay, and under the current law, if you were to go somewhere and they ask you for your information, they're also busting concealment in effect and making sure that everyone who is around knows that you're not only a police officer and an easy target and probably the prime target in a situation where somebody is doing something nefarious, but also carrying?
Yes, ma'am. And it even goes worse. It's not that we're just subjected to take the sideline and go into the office somewhere where people really don't know what's going on. They're giving us a bracelet that everybody in that venue knows what that bracelet means. And yes.
Okay. Thank you
Simply
very
yes.
much for the clarification.
Representative McNorton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow up a little bit. So if you have a venue that you guys are got a security detail for, and you have plainclothes undercover type officers on duty, where would that fall on, especially like they aren't going to wear a wristband, right? Or explain that to me, how that would fall into the current law or what?
On-duty undercover officer, how that falls in, sir, I'm not sure that we've encountered that. Maybe Chief Atterbury or Ed may be able to speak to that. But I'm unaware of where an undercover officer has ran into that. I can tell you hypothetically that I suspect that it would just take a matter of getting a hold of management saying, you know, I'm undercover and this can't happen. But that's just supposition. I honestly don't know.
Okay, thank you, man, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you for coming out today. I know you had a long drive today.
It's been a long week. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee. Appreciate it.
And next up is no stranger to this committee, Chief Atterbury.
Thank you. I'm Darrell Atterbury, Chief of Police, City of Bel Air, but representing the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police and also speaking for the Kansas Sheriff's Association. It's no fun going last. You covered a lot, but I want to recap a few things. One is that we're being asked to provide that personal identifying information and wear the name or the wristband. I find that very disagreeable. In addition to that, the Kansas Personal and Family Protection Act made provision that we would not have to do things like that, and I will touch on that here in just a moment. One of the things that we've run into is that you go to a venue, go to an event that everybody else gets to go to, but we're scrutinized more thoroughly. Okay, we're off duty and we're carrying, but this act makes provision for us to do so with as seamlessly as possible. But people are sewing seams into that with regularity. Okay? One of the things that happens is that if I refuse to, and I say, I want to follow the statute, I want to follow the law, I get told I can leave. Okay? Whether that's a government-run organization, Wichita Riverfront Stadium, or some other private venue. Okay? And that is also objectionable. I shouldn't have to leave just because I want to follow the law. Okay? All this stems from my experience. I went to Riverfront Stadium. I went to the northwest entrance. I was stopped when I identified myself by my credentials like the statute says I'm supposed to. They called an off-duty officer who's contracted with the stadium to come over and escort me through the crowd, okay, to the other side of the stadium where I was taken to an entrance where I was made to fill out an electronic database with my personal identifying information, my name, my address, my personal address, not my business address, the agency I worked for, my phone number, etc. And then they took photographs of all of my identification, and they don't need that. And then they put that fluorescent wristband on me and said I had to keep it. I had to wear it the whole time I was there because that would identify me as an off-duty officer wearing a firearm, off-duty carry. I find that, again, objectionable. I shouldn't be subjected to that additional scrutiny, especially since the act says I shouldn't be. Okay, and And then I have another example in my written testimony about one of my officers who went and took somebody for treatment at a hospital, and it was for a mental situation. So he gets him checked in, and they asked him if he would want to go back and say goodbye. He said, no, I'm an off-duty officer, credentials. I'm carrying, I shouldn't go back in that secure area. Responsible behavior. And he was standing there speaking with somebody, and then 2 security guards come trotting at him. Armed security from St. Joe Hospital in Wichita. And they asked him if he was an officer and he was carrying. He said yes. They ordered him out of the hospital. This is a public area. Anybody can walk in there. It's not like going to a federal courthouse where everybody has to get rid of their firearms, me included. Okay? This is a non-secure area, and he was ordered out of the hospital. You can either go secure your weapon in your car and come back in, or just leave. He chose to leave. Okay, so this is not just venues. It's private businesses too, and it shouldn't be happening there. And what I would like to do is just walk you through some things that are already in the statute, the things that are resident in the act, and that is some of these things, the personal identifying information in this database that I don't know how they keep it or secure it. I don't know if it can be hacked easily, and my information's out there for everybody. I don't know, on the side. But they've developed this as a way to circumvent the intent of 75-7C22 and dissuade off-duty officers from carrying when they would legally be authorized to do so. I'd direct your attention to 75-7C17, where the legislature directed specific language at cities, counties, and other political subdivisions not to regulate, restrict, or prohibit the carrying of concealed handguns except as provided by other parts of the act. These restrictions are specifically not for law enforcement. Okay? There are restrictions out there. But one would infer from 75-7C17 that the legislature did not want restrictions put in place more than what they already had done in the act. Okay? Let's go to the act. And that is for off-duty foreign retired law enforcement officers and me, still working, carrying concealed when an off-duty officer, law enforcement officer may carry, and that may is I choose, not the venue. They don't get to choose. I get to choose if I want to carry. I can lock it up in my car. I can leave it at home, but I get to choose if I may carry in a building where an on-duty law enforcement officer would be authorized to carry a concealed handgun regardless of whether the requirements above amended there too for prohibiting the concealed handgun in such buildings has been satisfied. So that has to do with 2 things. One, that I'm proficient in the use of my firearm. And I know that when I present my credentials, that means I'm proficient in my firearm. Otherwise, we take it away. So I've got those 2 things that I'm supposed to satisfy. And by presenting my credentials to the person in charge of the venue, that should satisfy them, according to the act, the way it's written, that I should be able to enter just like an on-duty law enforcement should be able to enter that venue. So we would, and I want to add, I'm just speaking about this part of the act. I'm not speaking to the other parts of the act the AG is wanting to make some modifications to. We support him in that, but we're just going to focus on this part right here. So with the modifications to the act that we're bringing forward in 2052, we would want to eliminate those things that people are doing that bring us into greater scrutiny, the wristbands, the personal identifying information that is being required now, or we get to leave the venue. We don't believe that those things are part of the original intent of the act, and we would encourage you to pass 2052. Stand for questions.
Representative Reese?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate seeing you again, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me examples on how an officer would lose privileges to carry and wear a badge?
That would be a list of about 52 things that CPost in the state of Kansas, that's police standards and training for Kansas. They would lose their certification for certain misdemeanor crimes, certainly felony crimes, or things that would be, and in the state of Kansas, it's different than most states. They don't have to be convicted. If the preponderance of the evidence shows that that officer did a thing, one of those 50-some, they can lose their certification.
And the reason I'm asking is I'm in Kansas City, Kansas, and we've had a situation, and one of our detectives from years abused his privileges, abused his badge, abused his gun, and went around carrying for years until it was made public that what he had done in the past. He recently committed suicide. How is the public to know about this individual or any officer who's not a member in good standing and the ability to carry a badge should have been revoked? How do we know?
Well, you could go to the Kansas CPost website and do a name search on people who've had revocation suspensions of their certification, and you can check that.
Repeat that, please.
Go to the Kansas CPost website, and they keep a list that's open to the public to check a name and find out the standing of their certification. So you can see if it's been suspended, lifted for some reason, or if it's not, they're probably in good standing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Mosley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you mentioned, I have two questions, and please let me finish my questions and you can answer both of them. So you mentioned that that they're taking photos of your credentials.
Yes.
So that is a true statement.
Yes.
So that's my first question. And then also, is there any continuity between like venue by venue, or is it just like this venue, there's like this 18-year-old kid who's taking photos of your stuff, and then this other venue, they just want to have your address?
No continuity at all.
Okay.
And it was mentioned by Lieutenant Greenwood that some of the casinos in the state, in the beginning, there was a terrible situation where they wouldn't let you onto the floor. Another legal activity. I don't gamble, but many people do. But they wouldn't let them now. It's not such a problem. In Wichita, we've got places, and again, it's something similar to what Lieutenant Greenwood talked about. They do more security checks if it's going to be a difficult band versus a mild band. You know, Michael Bublé is probably not going to cause the attention that some wilder group might.
I don't know. Michael Bublé goes hard. My next, and I actually have a third question. When you're concealed carrying, are you allowed to drink?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wilcott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony and presentation here or discussion. I'm trying to understand what the background or premise or what value private information collected brings in a scenario. You shared a story that this has happened to you personally. Did they explain why they were trying to collect private personal information and recording that? I'm just not connecting why that's
Well, I
value add.
actually did call the manager, and I wanted to know why they were doing it. And they told me specifically, one of the reasons why I'm here is that statute says that they are not precluded from doing that, so they're going to do it. And again, I say, I come to the conclusion that they're doing that to make it an onerous process so that I will be dissuaded from exercising my right to carry off duty, something that I've done for 43 years. I can't do it when I go to the ball game, whether I have a beer or not. They're just trying to enact something, a process, a rule, or a regulation for the Riverfront Stadium, and I think it's been renamed, but to keep me from carrying inside because it's just a process that some people just don't want to go through. It's enough of a process, and I go to enough games that I got a safe and mounted it in my truck so I can not have to go through the process. And as I go through, I feel like I'm missing something. Yeah.
Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've done security, I'm sure, for different events before. And so what is the logic of the people at the Riverfront Stadium? They want you to wear a bright, is that to an event they're shooting or something? They know that, you've already been checked out, or it's like, they just, I'm just a little, what is the logic? Why would they require that, if you were in their shoes? What's their logic?
Well, to me, it doesn't make sense. To them, they're probably thinking it's a great logical step to be able to identify somebody who might be armed in the crowd. But if they know it and the drunk idiot behind me knows it, before long I'm getting harassed by that drunk idiot. And I'm just there to watch a ball game. I don't need the extra problems of somebody just because they see me as a police officer to harass me in my off-duty time.
Okay. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions. Thank you, Chief.
You bet. Thank you.
Next up, we have Representative Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues, members of the committee. And so you've already heard quite a bit of testimony, so I will just be very brief. As you've already heard, this bill that are introduced into this committee basically just covers three things. One is streamlining being able to change a provisional license into a standard license, as we already covered. The Soudens actually happen to be my neighbors, four doors down, I believe. And in fact, David actually helped me out tracking down my husband this week, and helped me out during a little emergency crisis. So I'm very grateful to them. And so it's always a pleasure to be able to help participate in drafting a bill to correct bad law when we have a glitch and a problem that's not working the way we intended. So I won't say any more about that first part of the law. Then the second part, as far as that we really haven't addressed much so far today, is accountability for suspended and revoked concealed carry licenses. And with this change, really, we're talking about if you have a concealed carry license and you do happen to get it revoked or suspended, the change in the language here will make it so that you will receive a written notification from the Attorney General's office. And after you receive that written notification, you will have 30 days to physically return your license or documentation back to the Attorney General's office. And if you fail to do so, the licensee could be fined by the Attorney General's office up to $250. And so that's basically covers that. And that would be a new addition, which is just about personal responsibility. And then third, obviously the most interesting piece so far has been about protecting law enforcement. And I'll just remind those of us who have been serving on this committee, I've been on this committee for 3 years now, and I guess this will actually be starting May 4th. I believe every year we hear from law enforcement about this issue and this problem. And I would just like to add a few details. It is no small thing to have someone who just happens to be working somewhere at some facility collecting detailed personal information about you, your address, your email, your photograph, copies of your, photos of your ID. That is no small thing. Many of us know what it's like to have suspicious packaging mailed to us. Probably every one of us sitting here in this committee have protocols in our home for how we open the mail in our houses right now. I know right now in my house, I'm putting in a new security system because of threats that are made. Okay, all of us have a choice. We get a choice that's our personal decision about whether or not we choose to put our address and our personal phone number on the legislative website. Even a simple thing like giving out our email makes a huge risk for being hacked. The more people have our email, the more risk we have for the kinds of emails that we receive, and it greatly increases our chances of being phished, et cetera, okay? And in this day and age, having an employee at a business increases the chance for being doxxed, and let's be honest, there are a lot of people in this world who have it out for law enforcement. And that's just the facts. I happen to have a son that is a firefighter. And you know what? Firefighters are adored. In fact, it's a little ridiculous. In fact, I'm actually shocked they actually get a lot of sexual harassment, and it's actually shocking to me as a mother. But the amount of hatred that I hear towards law enforcement is also shocking. And I think if we don't think that employees at businesses would not potentially release private information out onto the internet of off-duty law enforcement officers, I think we're lying to ourselves. And it's certainly opening it up for the potential. So I think this is a reasonable thing to add to this law to protect them. So with that, I will close, and I'm willing to answer questions. Thank you.
Committee, are there any questions? Representative Clayton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. Thank you for bringing this legislation because honestly, the first part, when the when we're talking about the licenses and that sort of provision, it's ridiculous. And I am not a huge gun person, but I think it's ridiculous for someone having to wait 5 years just because of what time of year their birthday falls in. I really like that section of the bill, and I think that that's wonderful. I stand in strong support. We've had separate hearings for this other section, the section 2, page 8. And so one of the points that you bring up is, how onerous it is or dangerous to have to share your email addresses or things like that. Everywhere I go, when I buy things in retail, they ask for my email address because they're trying to, get us to sign up to store rewards. They're asking for email addresses. They're asking for phone numbers. And that's like if I want to go buy socks at Kohl's. I do not find that to be onerous. I don't find it to put me in danger. I think that politicians are also a relatively hated class. We all kind of, sometimes we bring that on ourselves. But I mean, to that point, it's just, I have a really hard part getting my head around this extra section, in particular because this was a standalone bill last session, and now it's being added with a very agreeable and laudable change to our law that definitely needs to happen. So I'm having trouble getting there. I'm trying to be a good sport, but it's, help me out a little bit more here. Just as I asked the previous conferee, I don't understand why it's onerous to give one's email address or their physical address. We do it all the time. Unless we make a law that says that nowhere, anywhere, including any retail or grocery store, is allowed to ask anyone that, and then we get that sort of blanket protection. But I do find a flaw in the argument that giving your email address or your physical address or phone number is onerous.
Well, and I appreciate, of course, obviously, you are allowed to have your opinions and your concerns, but I think that we do offer protections for law enforcement. And, for example, depending on the situation, law enforcement are allowed to protect their personal information under certain circumstances, and just like our military is under certain circumstances. And we do allow for that under different circumstances for different security reasons. And I think that this is a reasonable reason to do this, and especially because in this case they're being specifically targeted.
Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you spoken to any African American or law enforcement of color? Because often there's been instances where people are law enforcement officers and they are people of color and they've been confused for perpetrators. And so in a situation where I'm guessing that you think that there's going to be some like a law enforcement officer that diffuses a situation and there's a guy holding a gun and then other law enforcement comes in, how's that person going to be protected if there's nothing to identify them as someone who's been a credentialed officer?
Anyone who conceal carries has a risk no matter what. So anyone that chooses to carry concealed is accepting a risk.
So in this situation, this officer has they want special privileges in a building that like concealed carry is not happening amongst the general public because this is a private business who has decided that they don't want weapons on their premises. So if an officer is able to do that, what is who's going to assume that I'm a police officer if I'm carrying a concealed weapon and I'm the person who's saved the day in this situation, which I'm thinking that is your logic in this situation. What is going to be something that's going to identify that I am not the perpetrator that has caused the ruckus in this situation? So how is this going to protect officers of color?
Well, inherently, if an officer of color chooses to conceal carry in this situation, he's already chosen to accept the risk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Representative. And coming next on the list is Megan Hilbish. Welcome to committee. Make sure your mic's turned on.
Check. Hello, Chairman, Vice Chairwoman, and committee members. Thank you for letting me speak. I am speaking on behalf of the Kansas State Rifle Association. I am the current executive director and lobbyist for the KSRA PAC. I also have my personal concealed carry, standard concealed carry license, and have for several years. The Kansas State Rifle Association, in case you don't know, has over 3,000 members, and some of which are active duty law enforcement, and some that would like to exercise their right to conceal carry off duty without having to wear their badge or a wristband or some other kind of insignia that identifies them as an easy target. In my written testimony, I hope you've all had the chance to read it, I've stated several reasons why KSRA strongly supports this bill. Those reasons are: it corrects a problematic error within the Kansas's concealed carry statutes, it ensures fairness and accountability for concealed carry license holders. Currently, 18 to 20-year-olds who successfully pass a concealed carry course, just like I did, although I was over 21, so I didn't have to worry about, and back then they didn't have, the provisional concealed carry license, which I think it's great that we do have that. But it is unfair to ask a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old to have to wait 4 more years. So technically, if you would have been almost 21 when you passed the concealed carry course, which requires a written test, a live fire exam, you learn the laws, how to safely carry, how to safely securely storage, anyways, that if you've passed your concealed carry course and you got fingerprinted, you went through the federal and state criminal history background check. They passed it just like I did, but they happen to be less than 21 years old. I don't think, and KSRA doesn't think, that they should be treated any differently. Once they turn 21, they passed the same thing that I did. So why should they be held back for 4 more years, say until almost 25 years old? And to me, and on behalf of KSRA, the biggest issue there is when you go out of state. So I've been a competitive shooter, rifle shooter, since I was 7 years old. I've represented the United States across the country and at the World Championships. If I try to go to another state in the United States and I had my concealed carry in my car, on me, in my purse, but say I wasn't 21, technically other states, the reciprocity, they don't recognize the provisional concealed carry licenses like they do my concealed carry license. But say that provisional concealed carry licensee becomes 21 years old and they want to go to another state and legally and safely have their concealed carry firearm for personal self-defense. If they want to have the right to protect themselves, as a young female who traveled across this country at 16 years old on my own, staying in cheaper hotels, traveling to shoot at competitions where, back then I may not have had, my concealed carry pistol, handgun, but rifle competitions, I wasn't unarmed per se, but still, my mom probably would feel a lot more comfortable back then, say if I would have been 18 to 20 years old, took the time to take and pass this concealed carry, the process that we've already established, and have that license if, once I became 21 years old and I have the right to take my personal self-defense firearm with me somewhere else. I don't see any logical reasons why we are basically, or frankly, treating 18 to 20-year-olds or 20 to 24-year-olds like second-class Kansas citizens or residents. KSRA firmly believes this transition should happen automatically from the provisional concealed carry license to your standard concealed carry license when the person turns 21 years old. There's also a lapse time that a provisional concealed carry holder, from my understanding, when they want to get their standard concealed carry license, they have to mail in their provisional concealed carry card, and then they don't have a card, the concealed carry license on them. And so that just doesn't seem fair, that they currently have to mail that in and then they're without and waiting or while they're applying for then their standard concealed carry license, which isn't any different than the course they already, and the background checks, the NICS check, everything they already passed, that they have to then send in their provisional license just to get the standard one. KSRA supports this bill because it provides a common sense fix to an unnecessary delay. Making this transition fair is important, and it removes an arbitrary barrier. We support the rights, it also supports the rights of responsible concealed carry license holders who, like I've said, have taken the time to go the extra mile and actually take the concealed carry course and legally, successfully pass it. Also, I'd like to state that this bill will bring Kansas in line with the best practices nationwide regarding concealed carry licenses. In particular, the ability to carry in states where the reciprocity agreements they have with Kansas for our standard concealed carry licenses. It protects the rights of responsible license holders while maintaining accountability for those who fail to follow the law. KSRA does not oppose the new language in the bill regarding the revocation and suspension of concealed carry licenses for individuals who break the law and thereby forfeit their right to carry or forfeit the right to firearms. Maintaining the integrity of the concealed carry system is critical to public safety and the responsible exercise of our Second Amendment rights. Ensuring that those who violate the law are held accountable strengthens public confidence in the concealed carry program and aligns with the Kansas State Rifle Association's commitment to upholding responsible gun ownership and legal use. KSRA supports our law enforcement officers' right to concealed carry off duty. When they are off duty, how about we let them be off duty? We don't see any issue for them to be allowed to conceal carry even when not wearing a really bright, obnoxious colored wristband or their badge or other identification insignia, whatnot. LEOs are well trained. Some of the KSRA members are LEOs that are well trained. We feel more comfortable when responsible firearm owners are legally concealed carrying. And as a person who myself often concealed carries, open carries legally, not just in the state of Kansas, I would feel more comfortable as well if this bill was passed. So thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony in support of House Bill 2052 on behalf of KSRA. We urge you to act swiftly to approve this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Body, are there any questions? Representative Mosley?
Thank you, and I'm pretty sure you're very well trained. Can you give me a little bit of what does your concealed carrying training entails? What do you have to do to get your concealed carry license? What does that training look like?
So legally, to get your concealed carry license, you have to be, an upstanding citizen, right? You can't have any felonies. You have to be following the laws, and you have to have that initiative in yourself to want to take the class, pay for the class, sit there in an in-person 8-hour instruction, and then you have to take a written test. There's a live fire portion that you must pass, right? And then you're also learning the laws, how to, responsibly, ethically, legally carry your firearms. And then after that, you take the course, you have to go to your local sheriff's office and get your fingerprints done. Your fingerprints then get sent in with all the paperwork, goes to the Attorney General's office. Then they do, federal, state, criminal history check, NICS check, background check, and you obviously have to pass that to then get your license. But it took a while for mine to be approved by the Attorney General's office. And so I wanted to take my concealed carry as soon as I was 21 years old because I know that shows that I went the extra mile to do that, even if I was gonna, constitutionally carry.
Yep. All right. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Megan, thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'd like to direct the committee's attention to, we do have some, a written proponent on there also that are in your S drive for this. We also have, moving on to neutral, we also have written neutral testimony in your information packet as well. And we're going to move over to the opponents, and we have Nicholas Reneker. Welcome to the committee. Now, Nicholas, I read your testimony. I just want to make sure that we stick to the absolute subject that we're on right now, that we're talking about in this bill. Thank you, sir.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for allowing me to speak today. My name is Nicholas Reinecker from Inman, Kansas. I would like to say that, positive note, I do agree with the portions in Section 8, besides my and the citizens of Kansas inalienable rights. I believe that you should take care and protect the peacekeepers who are taking care of the citizens. I believe God, through the shaking of we the people with sovereignty, providence, and or judgment, has allowed a pivot of federal administration in the United States that will hopefully facilitate the actions needed that gets us back to the basics of this constitutional republic's founding and the basics of life, because without a proper foundation, we will surely crumble. Today, though, we celebrate Kansas, and the question for you to consider is, do states still matter? And next year, we will celebrate 250 years since the birth of America, a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit. I am here today with my symbolic red and blue lights flashing and sirens wailing, urging you to arrest any unconstitutional infringements and burdens upon the people of Kansas that are in this bill. These infringements include parts of Section 1A2, including any language pertaining to federal firearms regulations, prohibitions, restrictions, infringements, etc., which should be stricken. That is my first proposed conceptual amendment. One look at the history of what is called the ATF, including operations such as Fast and Furious, Ruby Ridge, the Waco siege, and current DEI deception, should be enough for that issue alone. The states created the federal government, and regardless of reciprocity or a state executive issuing licenses for a constitutional and natural right, these prohibitions were not made and are not in pursuance to the Constitution. They are not enumerated as a power of Congress or under the authority of the United States, whereby there is no authority to federally regulate firearms according to the Constitution of the United States. Wasn't it Hamilton that said something about if the federal government had general power, or if the Constitution implied general power, it would be absurd because he, Alexander Hamilton, along with the other founders, made the list. And Article 6, Clause 2 confirms any law exercised outside thereof is null and void, let alone supreme. Also, as far as state language is concerned, if unconstitutional disarming is attempted, there should still be the constitutional sheriff, regardless of consequence and regardless of federal courts or derelict state legislators, judicial activists, or overreaching executives, up to and including amendment language.
Nicholas, I kind of hate to stop you there. I need to make sure we stay on task on exactly what this bill is and your direct opposition to this bill.
Well, it's kind of like when you open up a gaming bill, like with the problem gambling and addictions funds, they also talk about smoking in casinos. So I believe that this would be germane to the bill as it stands.
Yeah, please keep it on direct topic, please.
Add to this, those citizens who might be called upon to be part of a sheriff posse to aid in repelling threats therein. Add to this the 10th Amendment, which precludes Congress from mandating that states mimic, let alone enforce, unenumerated federal policies because it would equal unconstitutional commandeering. Yet it seems some states are addicted to federal money, taxpayer money just the same, so as to fail in this restraint.
Cumulatively, it is easy to see the concrete, explicit, and definitive need to remove the language from our statutes. So the only way, no matter how stupid it would be, for federal prohibitions to prevail in any form or substance would be if the Second Amendment is repealed or altered. For more information on unconstitutional commandeering, you can watch the hearing from the Senate Government Efficiency Committee meeting that was held last week. We must reject putting safety over liberty. We must reject any hint of serfdom creep, government tyranny, or the use of Marxist ideology and return to a constitutional republic rule of law. Now, I do not advocate for mandatory gun ownership, but think about it. To enter this building carrying a concealed firearm, one must only tell security at the front door, which is all. You know, we have this registry process anyway, which to my feeling, it's an onerous process, but that's beside the point. The standard is not the use or idolatry or addiction of a substance. It is about violent, threatening, and or forceful behavior because for the most part, Kansas does it right. We know that threats come in many forms, and I am confident there are enough good guys with guns in this building to eliminate any threat needed and without imposing infringements against the rights of the people. I will not continue on reading all of this that I have because I understand you need to get out. I do think that when we talk about psychoactive pharmaceuticals, psychoactive substances, whether or not it's a grandma with a .357 revolver in readiness to defend her hearth and home, person and family, after consuming a cannabis-infused brownie or something like that, to say she is a dangerous lunatic and is danger to the public so as to justify nullifying her Second Amendment rights is extremely absurd. The current ideology, I believe, is the consequence of not being a moral and relational or religious people. Without these two necessities for keeping a republic and without bearing the weapon of truth and life, we are all dangerous lunatics, undeserving of a self-governing country where we the people, grateful to Almighty God, will be great only by being blessed through obedience to the principles of life, family, and liberty, which is freedom with morality. I urge you to oppose this bill in its current format and do your duty to defend and uphold the Constitution as it was written by the consent of its governed citizens and put Kansas in an offensive stance against tyranny of any form or degree. Thank you, and I will stand for any questions.
Body, are there any questions? Representative Reese.
Sir, I've seen you here before. What is your background? What do you do?
I'm just a citizen of Kansas. My wife and I have run a cafe in Inman, Kansas for the last 18 years. I have been coming up here for about 12 years trying to get cannabis, the natural plant, off the Controlled Substances Act and afford Kansans their natural and constitutional rights to eat, grow their own food, and eat whatever they want for food, fuel, fiber, or other
To summarize,
issues.
what you're saying is that you feel no permit should be necessary because you have a constitutional right to carry anybody, right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
Permits aren't necessary because everybody has a constitutional right to carry no matter what. Is that what I'm understanding from you?
That is my basic premise. And
Thank you.
As
Thank
far
you.
as
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
according to the Constitution of the United States and the Second Amendment, yes.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Nick, thank you for coming up. I'm sorry, did we have a Representative McNorton?
Mr. Chair, if I could ask a question of one of the law enforcement officers. I know we're out of turn there. It's up to you.
Sure, go ahead. We'll bring him back up.
I don't care which one of you come up. It'd be real quick. You got the short straw, I guess. But just to clarify a couple other representatives' questions. So what is the standard operating procedure if an off-duty officer is at an event, something happens, and they intervene, and another officer on duty comes on that scene? What is the standard operating procedure that off-duty, what happens in that situation?
Well, ideally, that off-duty officer is going to have their identification out, holding it up over their head to identify himself to responding units, whether they be on duty or contracted to work that part-time job. Okay. Now, if I'm catching what you're saying, I've been involved in some of those. Back up. I've laid my gun on the ground away from the suspect. They're on scene. I make sure they know who I am. I'll get it. I make sure that they know who I am. Been around for a while. A lot of people recognize me. So then I'm able to secure my weapon and do that. Every situation is different. Yeah. And they're very dynamic. And usually there's a lot of screaming and yelling going on. And so you have to make.
So in your opinion, would a bright green orange band make any difference on identifying yourself?
I can tell you, to divert just a little bit, when I was set down, I was wearing a long sleeve shirt. I tucked that thing all the way up and pulled it down. Nobody's going to see that I had it on. Other folks that I know, they've gone through the process, and as soon as they get to their seat, they pull it off and throw it in the trash.
Okay. So one other quick follow. Does this matter if somebody's a person of color, race, creed, anything, same standard operating procedure, right?
It's anybody who enters.
Okay, thank you.
All right, body, any other questions? All right, well, I'm going to bring this hearing to a close.
Qualify my statement. Can I qualify my statement?
Yeah, he's fine. He understands.
Well, I need to qualify because
Sir.
I don't want him to think that I was saying something that I wasn't.
You can free to speak to him offline as soon as we close here. We're getting ready to leave here because we're getting out of time here. He's
Okay.
free to touch base with him here in just a
My
minute.
testimony wasn't allowed to read all the way through, so I feel that qualifying it would help. But you're the chairman, and I won't argue with you.
We have your full written testimony here. So we're going to close this. I do have want to bring up discussion real quick on our minutes. We need to approve our minutes from the January 14th, 21st, and the 22nd. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. So everybody has this in your packets and hopefully have reviewed. Just want to, we just need to get these approved. If there's no questions, do I have a second? Second. Any discussion on that? Not seeing any. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are accepted. That concludes our meeting today. Thank you guys for all coming out. I will see you soon.